called the oval window. And when the stapes bone vibrates, it goes forwards and backwards into the oval window, and that motion sets off waves of fluid within the organ of hearing. So the organ of hearing is full of these sensory hair cells, more namely the outer hair cells and the inner hair cells, and they're contained in fluid. So there's two types of cochlear fluid. We've got perilymph fluid and endolymph fluid, and it's the endolymph fluid that travels in waves, and these waves of fluid travel over the hair cells, and it all depends on the frequency of sound. So with a high frequency sound, the wavelength is shorter, so it stimulates the higher frequencies near the entrance of the cochlea. And if it's lower frequency sounds, the hair cells that code for the lowest frequency sounds are at the apex of the organ of hearing, so furthest away. So the base at the base of the organ of hearing, it's the higher frequencies. At the apex, it's the higher low frequencies. Therefore, because fluid is constantly, whether it's a low or high frequency sound, traveling over in some parts the higher frequency hair cells, they're continuously getting worn out, and they get worn out quicker. Noise-induced hearing loss. We do live in a noisy world. A lot of the noise in factories, for example, recreational noise, shooting, for example, they are more at the higher frequencies. So higher frequencies are just more predisposed to getting damaged. And therefore, I'll just explain how the hair cells work. So as the fluid travels over the hair cells, depending upon the wavelength of sound, the hair cells then shear side to side. When they shear side to side, you get a chemical change within the hair cells. They kind of shrink, allowing chemicals in, and that lifts a membrane that they're connected to, the basilar membrane, which then in turn, essentially, when the hair cells vibrate, it goes through physical and chemical changes to produce an electrical signal. And this electrical signal is then transported up the hearing nerve, the auditory nerve, the eighth cranial nerve, to the brain, where it's processed. So it is a very intricate and complex system, and sometimes even when I attempt to kind of just simplify it a bit, it still is quite confusing. So essentially, you got the outer ear, which is the ear canal, and the pinna, so the satellite dish on the outside, which is responsible for the capture and transfer of sound waves through to the middle ear, where the sounds hit the eardrum. So the eardrum is made up of the middle ear. The eardrum vibrates. The vibrations are transmitted through the three bones to the inner ear, the organ of hearing, where little hair cells then vibrate and shear side to side in response to the sound waves. They in turn produce an electrical signal, which is sent to the brain, and we perceive that as sound. The most common symptom of having a high frequency hearing loss is a lack of clarity. So people suffering from noise-induced hearing loss, whether it's the higher frequencies typically that are affected, or diabetes-induced hearing loss, because diabetes can restrict blood flow to the higher frequencies and more than the lower frequencies in the organ of hearing. And just simple age-related presbycusis hearing loss, it affects more the higher frequencies. Certain medications, ototoxic medications, so some of these medications can include aminoglycosides, so they are antibiotics that end in mycin, either spelled MYCIN or MICIN. So examples are neuromycin,